Flatnose greeted the two with businesslike handshakes, and together they began to examine our Suzuki. I paled. I groaned. Flatnose was selling our car. Suddenly our situation looked much more serious. I searched for somebody digging graves. Not yet. Not here. Perhaps they were planning to take us as hostages, across the border. I had heard similar stories, none with happy endings. Could we make a dash for the car dealers? If so, what then? People buying stolen rental cars without papers would probably not protect the very tourists the car was stolen from. Now I really wanted to talk with Lizzie. I glanced sideways, and this time she reacted, barely perceptible, just a sideways blink of her eyes. She had understood. We were a team again, and I felt much better. To Lizzie's feet lay a heavy frying pan. She moved her foot an inch towards the grip of the pan. I nodded a very slow, understood. Our guards paid no attention to details. I looked around. The two car dealers now sat in our Suzuki, which naturally wouldn't start. Flatnose had opened its hood and stood leaning into the motor. You may remember from Madagascar that Lizzie was a semi-professional squash player. She had exceptionally fast and precise reflexes and considerable strength. Thus, it was worth watching how she gripped the frying pan with both hands, swinging it in a full circle while simultaneously rising to her feet and in one smooth movement backhanded the man with the panga over his ponytail. He went down with a oomph. I might have been worried about his head if there had been time for compassion, but Lizzie swung again, this time at the small fat man. She missed his head but whacked hard into his left shoulder. The fat man howled and raised the stick with his right hand. Meanwhile, I had pulled the knife from my sleeve and flicked it open. Just as the man whacked down on Lizzie, I grabbed him from behind, pulling backwards and pressing the knife deep into his double chin, albeit with the blunt side of the blade. Thus his stroke lost some strength, but nevertheless knocked Lizzie on the head. She tumbled. Blood burst from a gash on her forehead. Behind us, the third tall man screamed, "Red alarm!" Before I could turn, his stick swished through the air and my neck fired up in pain. Nothing was broken. There was no nausea, only anger. I yanked my man around, escaping the next savage blow, but nearly losing the grip on the knife and my hostage. But then Lizzie had recovered and flew at the tall man. The frying pan slammed sideways into his stomach and immediately afterwards crashed square onto his head. I can't explain how Lizzie executed this double stroke so quickly, but down he went. Lizzie dropped the pan and snatched up the panga lying next to the bleeding ponytail. My hostage whimpered nicely, making no attempt to resist or flee whatsoever. Almost playfully, Lizzie swung the panga through the air, the blade too fast for the eye to perceive. Blunt or not, it made a frightful noise. The panga must have been just as long and heavy as a squash racket, for Lizzie wielded it with perfect ease as if she'd trained panga fighting all her life. Bleeding from the temple, she looked truly fierce. No doubt whoever stepped into that panga swing would be cut down like a young papaya tree.